Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Taylor Comblusier, a mining analyst at Red Cloud Securities. Today's webinar features LaFleur Minerals, which is a Quebec-focused mineral exploration and development company advancing a hub-and-spoke production strategy in the infrastructure-rich Abitibi region centered around its 100% owned, 750 ton per day and fully permitted Beacon Mill just outside of east of Val-d'Or. The 100% owned Swanson project that the company also owns is located about 40 kilometers to the north and hosts over 180,000 ounces of gold in current indicated and inferred resources, and is being advanced as a source of feed for the Beacon Mill. The company is also open to processing third-party feed. Today I have with me on the webinar Paul Tenier, who's the CEO at LaFleur Minerals, and the format of today's webinar will be comprised of two parts. In the first part, Paul will provide an update on and introduction to LaFleur and what you have to look forward to throughout 2025. And then in the second part, we'll take your questions live in a Q&A session. So please submit your questions throughout the presentation using the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. To start, I'll handle the disclosures and then turn it over to Paul. So for LaFleur Minerals, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the LaFleur corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for LaFleur Minerals specific disclosures. So with that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Paul to introduce you to LaFleur Minerals and what you have to look forward to with the company.
That's great. Thanks, Taylor. Thanks for the intro, and thanks to Red Cloud for setting this up for LaFleur. And thanks to everyone who's joined us today. As Taylor said, I'm the CEO of LaFleur Minerals. I'm a professional geologist and been working in the industry for just over 25 years. I have a background in from exploration all the way up through mining, having worked in production as well as grassroots exploration. Also a fair bit on the corporate finance front as well. I've been running junior companies and involved with junior companies either as a CEO or as a board member since 2017, 2018. And I've been with LaFleur now for just over a year. And so I'll be talking about the great project two great projects that we've acquired in the last, very quickly in the last 6 to 12 months. I'll skip through this. Taylor already mentioned this, and again, this is in our corporate presentation on our website. So feel free to take a look. So what is LaFleur Minerals? Well, LaFleur Minerals is a gold-focused company specifically in the Abitibi Gold Belt in Quebec. We've acquired the Swanson Gold Project, which is approximately 160 square kilometers. It started off as a small project around the Swanson gold deposit, which was previously owned by Monarch Mining, and then has since grown into nearly tripled the size through acquisitions from Globex, Abcorp Mines, and other prospectors, and also through claim staking by ourselves. It's very much focused on north of the Mackenzie Break, and traditionally been an area that's been underexplored in the past. Some of the majors have looked at it, including Agnico Eagle, who did look at the project in 2009. But generally speaking, it's not been explored as much as you would find towards the south in Val-d'Or and all the way to Rouyn-Noranda and into northern Ontario. Our other project is the Beacon Gold Mill. This is another project that we acquired from the bankruptcy proceedings with Monarch Mining last year. This is an active gold mill that was producing 750 tons per day, and had recently been, Monarch had spent over $20 million to refurbish, and they were actually using the mill as they were ramping up production for the Beaufort mine before they went into bankruptcy. So we had an opportunity to bid on the mill during the bankruptcy process. And so both Swanson and Beacon have come out essentially from that. But as I said, Swanson grew beyond just the Monarch deposit itself, and has grown into a much larger, and we're looking at it much more in a regional sense. So my talk today will be about both of these projects, and I'll start with Swanson first. As I'm going to the next slide here. So for those of you on the call that aren't familiar, the Abitibi Gold Belt is one of the largest gold producing regions in Canada, if not the world. Over 200 million ounces of gold have been produced historically. And with combined reserves and resources now sits at over 300 million ounces of gold. Very active. Quebec is an excellent jurisdiction for mining and exploration, much favorable with the flow-through regime. Especially, it's probably one of the best jurisdictions in Canada for that. Government is very supportive. Lots of active mines in the Abitibi and not far from where we are, including Agnico Eagle and many of the other companies, major companies in the area. So we're in a very good location. It's one of the reasons why we selected this area. We wanted a very favorable jurisdiction, and Quebec fits that bill. Just a quick update on our corporate structure. So we have about 63.5 million shares outstanding, currently with a market cap of around 10 million. We're seeing at about 15-16 cents. We've been very successful in raising a fair bit of money in the last year to 18 months, starting with a fair bit of flow through. Started off as charity flow through, and then also we recently, in the last 6 months, raised flow through Red Cloud. Actually, Red Cloud helped us raise almost 2.83 million in flow through, and so we've been advancing the Swanson project using this flow through, and I'll get into some of the details during the presentation. But mostly, it's been sort of anything from grassroots exploration all the way up into drilling, which is what we're planning on doing now, and they're in the process of getting drill permits for the Swanson project. We've also been advancing the deposit itself and looking at bulk sampling at the Swanson project over an existing mining lease based on the last mineral resource estimate that we did. So there's lots on the go for the Swanson project, and a lot of it is coming from the flow through. We've also raised a fair bit of hard funds as well, and we also recently did a fairly large warrant exercise. I guess it was been just a couple months ago. We're pretty tightly held for shares. Our chairman, Cal Malley, runs several companies, investment companies, and collectively within himself and the companies that he's involved in own close to 75% of the outstanding shares. We do have a bit of a larger public float now, just based off the flow through that we recently did. And we are also in the process of looking to raise additional funds, flow through, and also hard financing as well. We're listed on the CSE, and we're also on the OTCQB. I'll start with the Swanson project. One of the reasons we chose the Swanson project is because of the fact that it was fairly advanced. So Monarch had compiled a fair bit of data over the Swanson deposit, and also there had been a lot of historical work on it as well. And in fact, we're looking at a scoping study at the time and looking to potentially put it into production as a small open pit. So as I mentioned earlier, it's since grown into a much more regional project that's over 160 square kilometers. And within that are several other gold targets that are promising, such as Bartak, Jolin, and many others. And there's at least 30 gold showings in the area. And so we're looking at it on a much more regional sense. And so I'll get into the resource estimate, but basically we're just under 200 million ounces of gold indicated in inferred category for Swanson deposit itself. Bartek and Jolin have older historical resources, and we have actually done a fair bit of work to compile that information into a database and are looking to add that into the resource. We're really aiming to get at least 1 million ounces in the entire Swanson project. And that's going to be through additional drilling that we're going to do, verification drilling, infill drilling, and also step-out drilling in some of the targets, and also based on a lot of the high-resolution geophysics and IP surveys that we've done in the last few months. Let's get this map here on the left. The map here on the left. Here kind of shows you the location of within the Abitibi Gold Belt, and the area itself is actually pretty. Is very easy to access. It's a rail. There's a rail line that runs through the project, but road is only about 60 kilometers north of Val-d'Or. Paved highway to about within 8 kilometers of the deposit itself. And so it's very easy to be able to get in and out to do drilling and other exploration work, and also to do a bulk sample. We're currently evaluating doing up to 100,000 tons on the mining lease itself. The process is fairly simplified because there is an existing mining lease. That mining lease was actually put together by Agnico Eagle back in the late 2000s. And so we're in the process of working with the Quebec government to actually to get permission to do that bulk sample, and also with the Environment Department as well to look at a rehabilitation or reclamation and closure plan for that. So we're in the process of doing that, which is exciting. The drill spacing on site is within the core of the deposit is down to 25 meters or less. So we're very confident. It's in the indicated category now, and because it's mostly a disseminated gold deposit, that it's a bulk mining scenario with a small open pit. So it makes the geology a little bit easier to understand, and the engineering as well. This map kind of shows you a little more on the regional sense where we are. And so, we have Val-d'Or here. The Beacon Mill is just here, just outside of the town of the city of Val-d'Or, and the Swanson Project is up here in blue. For those of you, so this is the Swanson Project here, and within that are several other deposits that we have acquired, as I mentioned, Jolan, Bartek, Barote, near the Barote area as well. These are all areas that Abcourt Mines have projects, and when we did the deal in the option agreement with Abcourt, they were looking to divest their gold focused claims, and so that's what we acquired. And so they're much more focused on their base metals, and so within that we acquired quite a few targets. So we did a resource estimate, and the purpose of updating the resource estimate was Monarch had done about 10,000 meters of drilling between 2020 and 2021, and but they had never included it into the existing resource estimate. So when we acquired the project from them out of bankruptcy, the first thing we did is to add that 10,000 or so. We had a Novexplo put together the mineral resource estimate. Out of that too, we also updated the geological plan and geological model. Traditionally, there have been about 4 major gold zones within the deposit, and we were able to put together about 8 zones, many of which are subzones, but we had a better understanding of the geology. And I'll show you a map here shortly, or a cross-section that shows the deposit. Geologically, we're sitting within mostly mafic volcanics and intrusions. So the high-grade mineralization, gold mineralization is mostly disseminated. Is within sort of the green mica carbonates, and it's a lot of fuscite. We call it, it's a mica, and that's actually kind of an indicator in the alteration for these types of gold deposits. So in this part of the Abitibi, if you find the fuscites and these micas, it's typically the alteration is there, and you're typically going to find gold. It's a structurally controlled gold deposit, so you're going to see a lot of the gold mineralization along these shear zones and within a major structure. And that structure kind of runs through the very northern part and all the way down to the core of the Swanson project. So more information in our technical report on the geology, but essentially we're in very good rocks. And in other parts of the Abitibi, especially to the south, you might see it more in quartz veins and veinlets, and it might be much more nuggety gold. In this case, we're seeing it also in host rock and within the shear zones. And there are quartz carbonate veins that have gold as well, but generally speaking, it's much more amenable to bulk sampling, and also means that the grade continuity is fairly consistent within these zones. So it does make it easier to mine and for doing a bulk sample. Just another map showing, in this case, all the numerous mineral occurrences across the project. So the Swanson project is here. This is the original deposit that we acquired from Monarch, and traditionally the one that has been looked at the most. And then Bartek and Jolan are also shown to the south. And these were ones that we acquired through Abcourt. And so typically you'll see these shears are running through here. We call it a structural break, and within that highly faulted and shear zones, and within those highly faulted rocks, you'll find the gold mineralization. There's also a structure down here to the south as well. Interestingly, down in this area, you'll find much more sort of vein-hosted gold, but you also find more porphyritic and also kind of VMS style, highly deformed, of course. But and this is where you see in these areas here a lot more on the base metal side. But there is gold associated with these, and so we're looking at, for Bartek and Jolan, still there are some base metals, more so than what we see up here in Swanson. But we definitely are seeing gold, silver in these deposits to the south. And as a result of the geophysics, the high resolution geophysics we've done in the last few months, we've also been able to detect other structures and other potential gold targets. And so we're just in the process of completing an IP survey over a lot of these deposits, and we selected about 4 or 5 different targets, and we're just waiting for the results on those. And that's just going to firm up our understanding for drill hole targeting. And on average, we're looking at about 5,000 to 7,500 meters of drilling this summer, and shallow holes, 150, 250 at the most. We might do a few deeper holes, but generally speaking, these gold targets and potential ore shoots are very shallow in this region. This is just a cross section showing the results of the mineral resource estimate. So as Taylor mentioned, we have 123,400 ounces in indicated and 64,500 in inferred. Generally, the red here that you see in these pit optimization shells, the red is indicated. It's also where the bulk of the drilling has been to about 350 meters depth, and so that's mostly been infilled to about a 25 meter spacing or even less than that. So the indicated is essentially what we consider the open pit potential for this deposit, but the grades continue at depth, and so a lot of the inferred is targeting much of the deeper holes, and the spacing might be more 50 to 100 meter spacing, or there's just a little bit less understanding as we're going at depth. So the grades continue at depth. We're not really targeting it as an underground operation at the moment. We're just going to be looking at it as open pit. Generally speaking, we're seeing very little overburden, so we're probably looking at a 4:6 to 1 strip ratio. So fairly shallow. But that is going to be the focus right now. So the 123,400 ounces is essentially what we're going after for a bulk sample, and even in the stage 2, which would be a much larger deposit, a mine deposit. But for now, we're not going to be looking at the underground. Just another sort of cross section through from one drill hole, just showing the average grades here of about 0.65 grams over 208 meters. You can see within that a lot of higher grade intervals over 5 meters. So generally speaking, pretty good grades in through here. There's also other types of like critical mineral deposits and in the area, including the old asbestos mine, which is just east of Swanson. So it's a very varied mineralogically across this entire project area. So now I'll just move over to Beacon Gold Mill and kind of going on to the hub and spoke model. So we're kind of an interesting company in that we're, as you can tell, just from Swanson, we're sort of advanced exploration, but we're also a near-term gold producer because of the fact that we've acquired the Beacon Gold Mill. Just a little bit of background on the Beacon. We acquired it 100% in November of last year as part of the Monarch Mining bankruptcy proceedings. In total, for cash and shares, we got it for $1 million, and there's no royalties on the project. It's 100% owned. It includes the mill, it includes the tailings storage facility, and also includes the Beacon mine, which is an old historical mine that goes back to the early 80s and into the early 90s. Hasn't been mined in many years. It was used. The mine itself was actually was used for training purposes by the Quebec government for training miners. So we aren't looking at actually at Beacon Mill, at the Beacon mine itself, but just as a background, we own all of these assets 100%. But what our main focus is on the mill itself. So originally the mill, as I mentioned earlier, was built in '87. It's since been expanded, and Monarch spent over $20 million over 2 years to refurbish it to process ore from the Beaufort mine. And so overall, it's a 750 tons per day capacity. It's a relatively small mill, but fit for purpose for sort of these smaller types of deposits, so sort of sub 5 million ounces. What we've done since acquiring it is hire a crew. Actually, two of the individuals were former workers at the mill, and we were putting together a plan and a budget to restart the mill. So the mill's been on care and maintenance since early 2023. It was in very good condition when we acquired it. For care and maintenance activities were excellent, and so the mill was in great shape. It had been heated in the winter and cooled in the summer, and so and electricity had been running and had been monitored. This tailings storage facility was monitored as well and sampled on a weekly and monthly basis. So we're fully up to date on the permits. The tailings storage facility itself is next to the mill and is capable of processing up to 1.8 million ounces of 1.8 million tons of material. It's barely been used. So essentially the tailings ponds, finishing ponds are almost are empty at this point. There's probably combined under 100,000 tons that have actually been processed and at the mill since its inception. So we basically have about a 8, 9, getting close to 10-year mine life at the current capacity, at current mill capacity for that tailings storage facility. And again, it's all fully permitted. So in order for us to get it up and running, we have to spend about $5 to $6 million to do some repairs, maintenance, and also to get spare parts for the mill. We anticipate being able to get the mill up and running in about 4 to 6 months once we hit the go button on that restart. And the tailings storage facility is also in great shape. There's just minor repairs that need to be done. Mostly work that Monarch wasn't able to do while they were in bankruptcy proceedings. Just to give you an idea of where the Beacon Mill sits, and especially compared to the other mills in the area. So again, we're here near Val-d'Or, and there's lots of the other larger Westwood and some of the other big mills. And some of those mills are looking for customers for custom milling. But we are also looking and talking to other companies for custom milling opportunities for Beacon, especially as we can get the mill back up and running here pretty quickly. So the plan is to mill ore from the Swanson project. We'll start with a large bulk sample, about 80 to 100,000 tons of ore from Swanson. We also have about 7,000 tons of stockpile, low-grade and high-grade stockpile on site that was left from Beaufort mine that we'll be using as test material as we get the mill up and running. And we also have the opportunity to acquire at least 15 to 20,000 tons for bulk samples with other adjacent projects and other companies as well. We've also signed an MOU with Granada Gold, and they're looking to do a toll milling agreement with Beacon, potentially. We're just going through the due diligence process now and looking at all the technical details to make sure it's a great fit. But they're also looking, instead of building their own facility and tailings storage facility, they're looking at using Beacon. That project is near Rouyn-Noranda. So even though it is 7,500 kilometers away, it still makes economic sense, especially with gold prices the way they are. So Beacon is, when we speak about the hub and spoke, it's essentially our own projects, plus we're looking at acquiring other projects as well to bring into LaFleur. There's also bulk mining or bulk sample opportunities from several companies that are expressed interest, just because of the long lead times to get bulk samples and metallurgical testing done at some of the big labs, and also custom milling. So we're looking at a combination of sources of ore coming into the mill once we get it back up and running. The good news is we have some stockpile now to get things up and running as part of the recommissioning of the mill, and then we'll move into some of these other sources of ore. Just a little bit more details on the mill itself. We are planning on doing a site visit sometime either later this month or in June. So we welcome anybody who wants to come and get a tour of the mill. And also by that time, we should be drilling at Swanson as well. So there's opportunities as well for any of the geologists and analysts on the call to be able to look at some of the core from Swanson, historical and probably new core from our own program as well. So we are looking at doing that. It's very easy to get to Val-d'Or, as we all know. So it's very easy to get to the site either from Rouyn-Noranda or within Val-d'Or itself. But we're welcoming lots of people to come and take a look at the mill. And at that time, we'll probably be getting the mill back up and running, and also there could be some machinery running as well. So, but overall, we have a very ambitious plan to get this up and running in a very short period of time. And then on top of that, we're doing the bulk sample application for Swanson and updating a scoping study for that. And we're also looking at minor capex to take mostly road repairs and things to get to the Swanson site to actually get trucks moving ore from Swanson over to Beacon as well. Just talk a little bit to just finish up about our management team and our technical advisors. So I already mentioned myself and our chairman, Cal. We also have Louis Martin, who's our technical advisor and exploration manager. Louis has been working in the Abitibi in Quebec for over 40 years. He's a very good geologist, lots of experience. Louis was actually one of the individuals that helped us acquire some of the other projects within Swanson, help build Swanson into what it is. And Louis also has a lot of knowledge about the other gold deposits in the area, and we're going to be capitalizing on his knowledge and experience to actually acquire other projects as well. We have a pretty varied board as well. And we also have a few senior advisors, including Jean LaFleur, who's a well-known geologist in Quebec. He's currently advising Appian Capital out of London, but Jean has also been very instrumental in helping us with strategy and looking at potential projects, especially Granada Gold and some of these other companies. And due to his connections in Quebec in the mining industry, but also in the government as well, just from his many years of experience, both Quebec, Canada, and internationally. So we're very lucky to have Jean. His last name is LaFleur, which we get a lot of questions about. Purely coincidence, but it is kind of interesting that he has the same last name as our company. And then not another person that's not on this list, but we recently hired, we have an engineer as well, David Langlois, who was also the former engineer at Monarch Mining. And we've brought David on because of the amount of engineering work that we're doing now. And we're also his knowledge of the mill. He was one of the supervisory and managers during the refurbishment of the Beacon mill with Monarch. And so he's very, very familiar with the mill and working with the team there. And he's going to be helping us on the engineering side as well for the Swanson bulk sample and eventual operation there. So we're very lucky to have a very diverse technical team. We're highly specialized and very technical, and that's kind of what we need at this point. So yeah, I'm very excited about the team. We've really built up an excellent team to be able to bring these projects into production and in a very short period of time. So I think that is all. I believe that's it. Yes. So Taylor, we're open to any questions that anyone has.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul. Great presentation. So now we'll turn to the Q&A portion of the webinar. Just a reminder to everybody on the line that you can type in your questions into the chat box at any time. So to kick things off, maybe just in terms of where your treasury sits now, I know you went over that. What does that give you runway for before you mentioned having to look to raise a bit more?
Yeah, so we're about a third of the way through our existing flow through. So the last few months, because it's been the winter, we've mostly spent that on geophysics and doing IP surveys, which is perfect to do in the winter time. We have about 2 million left in flow through, which we're going to be spending on drilling. So we have a drill plan together for about 1 to 1.5 million. And we're also planning on spending some of that on our bulk sampling program as well. And also, there's a possibility of expanding the drilling program too, depending on the results we're going to get. So we're planning on kickstarting the drilling program in early to mid-June once we get our drilling permits from the Quebec government. We're just waiting on those. We have a drilling contractor selected for that. We'll have one rig turning to start. So yeah, the majority of our remaining flow through will go towards that. We just had about 750,000 in warrant exercises recently, so that's helped on the corporate front as well. So we're sitting close to a little over 3 million right now combined flow through and hard. But to fund the mill restart, we are looking at various options, including debt facilities and other financings as well. And we've been getting some interest on that, definitely. So we're having lots of calls with various groups that are interested in helping us fund the restart of that. So combined with the work on the mill and the tailings storage facility upgrades and repairs, we're looking at around 6 million, and that includes about a 30% contingency.
Okay, perfect. And then turning to the drilling for this year, is that 7,500 meters enough to get a sense of that potential for the open pit at Swanson? And will you need more drilling to flush that out? Will that allow you to convert some underground resources to the open pit, or is that constrained by depth in that dimension?
Yeah, so within Swanson itself, I mean, there's been a lot of drilling done there. So our focus on the drilling is less on Swanson deposit itself and more on the rest of the project area, especially in areas that like Bartak, Cholan, that haven't been drilled in like 20, 25 years, and or just very minimal drilling was done. What we want to do is be able to bring other deposits within Swanson into a resource category, the current CIM and 43101 standards. There is some opportunity to the west of Swanson along strike to be able, and we are going to drill there, and to the east as well. But it does get fairly closed off. It continues at depth, but our initial plan for this drilling program that coming up is not to look at very deep holes. We're much more focused on a regional sense and being able to bring other targets into a sort of deposit category to overall add resources to the project. And as I said, our goal is to get well over 1 million ounces. Historically, with Bartek and Cholan, even though they're not CIM and 431 compliant, we're talking at least 250, 300,000 ounces there just historically. So it's not going to take much to be able to bring those in through verification drilling, but also we're seeing opportunities along strike, especially, and also new targets that we've discovered just based on our very high resolution geophysics, the soil geochemistry programs, all the traditional methodology to make discoveries in these orogenic gold belts in Abitibi, Newfoundland, and Ontario, Red Lake, all these things. I mean, these are all, we've done all of the sort of grassroots to advanced exploration work to be able to get to the drilling stage. So we're expecting to have drilling across the board and be able to, in some cases, we may be able to bring things into an inferred category like Bartek and Cholan. So our plan is to at least do that, but also to do some scout drilling and step out drilling to add additional ounces that way.
Okay, perfect. And in terms of that depth of drilling, what do you think is kind of the maximum depth that you'd be looking at in this program?
I think on average, we'd be looking at anywhere from 250 to 300, and we might do a few holes, especially at Swanson. If it makes sense, we could go down to 500. But for the most part, they'll be fairly shallow drill holes, because most of the deposits in this case are very shallow to begin with, and we're really targeting more open pit potential resources. So that's our plan. Now, as we get the drill results in, and we see that there's continuity at depth, we may do a few at deeper depths, but for the most part, we'll be targeting shallow gold deposits.
Okay, perfect. And then just on that front, and in terms of talking about these shallow deposits, what would the kind of the overburden depth be that you're dealing with?
Yeah, good question. It varies a lot, actually. It's a glaciated terrain, so you do see variations in thicknesses from a few meters to tens of meters. So really, it just depends on where you are. In fact, it can be a challenge, and it's not just we're on our project, but throughout the Abitibi, it can be a challenge sometimes even to do soil geochemistry surveys just because of the thickness of the till in that case. And so So what we do, going back to the sort of more earlier exploration work, we do what we call oriented soil geochemistry surveys, and we use a company that's an expert in this, probably one of the best in Canada. They specialize in looking for anomalies in glaciated terrains. And so they put some thought into, sort of ice flow directions and things to determine where, these gold anomalies are coming from. In some cases that, they're looking at something that may be 200 meters away. So there are areas, I guess what I'm getting at is there are areas where the thickness of the till can be, 50 meters. In some cases it'd be 20. At Swanson, it's pretty low on average. I mean, in many areas, especially over the Swanson deposit itself, you can trench it, so it's actually fairly shallow overburden. So that's just glacial material. As for overburden in the rock sense, it varies as well. With Swanson, it's a few meters, probably 20 to 50 meters before you start hitting it, before you hit the mineralized zones. But in some cases, they're right at surface. So when we do our bulk sample, we'll be kind of looking at a smaller scale and then kind of growing from there. And that's been incorporated into our pit shell already. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'll put out another call for questions here, and maybe we'll just wait for any final questions to come in. If you could just highlight kind of the key takeaways about LaFleur that you want to leave with investors, and maybe the key news flow items that are imminent.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to come out of we're a unique company in that we were at the right place at the right time, I guess, to be able to acquire these projects when we did. We acquired them during a period when gold prices were much lower, sort of 1,800 to 2,000. And in a very short period of time, gold prices have increased to well over 3,000, as we know. It makes the economics of these projects actually much better. And also, too, and we're looking to become revenue generating in a matter of 6 to 12 months. Not a lot of junior companies with the market cap sitting around 10 million that can say that. We can confidently say that just based on the fact that we already started the process of a lot of these projects, including our bulk sample. So there'll be proof of concept there, and it can grow. We've already got a mine plan for up to 500,000 ounces. At 123,000 ounces of gold up to that amount, you can do the math, and at $3,000 gold price, there's some pretty substantial revenue there. Generally low cost. That's the one thing I want to say about, especially both with Swanson and also with Beacon. We aren't facing a bill of $50 to $100 million to get this mill back up and running. We're talking under $10 million, and that's with a significant contingency built in. And that's the result of the previous company, Monarch, having spent all that money and actually gone over budget to get that mill up and running. So we're and because we had a very, very low entry into it, so our returns are excellent for this mill. Very, very happy. We have the team. We have we have environmental scientists. We have the team at the mill, and we have mechanics. We have mill superintendent. We have an engineer. I mean, we're fully equipped to become a producer. So for such a small market cap company, I think we've done a very, very good job to be able to get to this point, and we continue to do that. So yes, we do have to raise some additional funds to get the mill back up and running. We're very confident that's going to happen. And then once that happens, I think we're going to get a lot of interest. I'm already seeing a lot of interest from different companies, especially we've talked to Probe Metals, we've talked to Globex, we've talked to a lot of these other companies that are potentially looking at Beacon because it's so close to their projects as being a potential source. If it's if they're maximized at their own mills, maybe there's an opportunity to bring some of the ore over to Beacon. Yes, it is a smaller mill. The other thing I wanted to mention to the audience is that we can expand this mill to at least 3,000 tons per day. So Monarch had actually done a study to look at adding a CIL circuit. I didn't mention it. It's in the presentation, but the mill uses a Merrill-Crowe method, which is very efficient method to extract gold through a cyanide process. But there is the opportunity to go much larger. So once we get the mill up and running, there might be a company out there that's maybe a year or two away from getting their mine up and running and permitted. Beacon can easily be expanded to that amount. There's actually room on the project for that. and we can add a gravity circuit and a CIL circuit and get it up to 3,000 tons. We could technically, if all was going well, do about up to 1,100 tons per day using the existing equipment and circuits that we have. That's pushing. Monarch never got more than 500 because they were in a ramp-up stage. It is nameplated at 750, but I just mentioned that we can push this a little bit higher if everything goes well. So I think I captured everything. I think it's just, you know, we're a very unique company in that sense. So the entry into LaFleur is very cheap. And so there's opportunities, you know, we'll be producing in a matter of a year or less. So.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's a good summary, Paul. I don't see any other questions that have come in, so I think we'll wrap up and leave things there for today. So I would like to thank Paul from LaFleur Minerals for taking the time today to host the webinar with Red Cloud Securities, and thank you to everybody on the line for tuning in with us.
Thanks very much.